in 1930, the Anglican Church had been the first Christian denomination to change 1,930 years of uninterrupted Christian teaching on the immorality of contraception.
Mm-hmm.
This sent shockwaves through the world, not just through Christianity, but through the whole world, because wise men and women, up until the 20th century, wise men and women have even today, wise men and women still understand this, but we've lost this as kind of common wisdom. It's no longer the common wisdom. It's no longer common sense.
Mm-hmm.
But for most of Western civilization, the common sense was that fertility is what orients sexuality towards what is true, good, and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Fertility is what orients what can be a self-seeking need, right, just to please myself at the expense of someone else. Fertility jostles us in the direction of learning how to live our sexuality in a self-sacrificial way.
Yeah.
Learning how to live our sexuality with love and responsibility, right?
At the service of a much broader community than just your own little self or just your own little marriage.
Correct. Yeah. Fertility is, as the very word indicates, the fruitfulness, the expansion from me to we.
Right.
And not just the two, but the two, in the normal course of events, the union of the two leads to a third, a community, which means the union of man and woman, as John Paul II will say in his Theology of the Body, is brings us to he says the substratum of ethics and culture, the very foundation of culture and ethics in general is the union of man and woman. When we live the union of man and woman with responsibility, with love and responsibility, it builds families that live the truth of love and responsibility. And that builds neighborhoods that live the truth of love and responsibility. That builds communities, cities, states, nations that live the truth of love and responsibility.
Right. It changes the fabric of culture, of life.
It builds the very fabric. It is the fabric of culture. It becomes the very fabric of culture. But when we try to zoom in on, well, can't we just have the love part without responsibility for raising children? Can't we just zoom in on the pleasurable aspect and cut it off from the responsibility of that broader we, that broader community, the family, the neighborhood, the city, the state, the nation? When we do that, John Paul II proposes, it is the beginning of a culture that degenerates, right? Our creation as male and female is a call to provide for the next generation. But when we separate sexuality from the next generation, we're no longer generating as a culture, we are degenerating.
And in fact, doing exactly what John Paul II said, we're separating the body from the spirit.
That's right.
And so we have disincarnated again.
People will say, well, can't I just love I remember getting a letter years ago. I had given a lecture at some parish, and maybe it was an email. I got an email from some guy, and I was making this very point, that to render the sexual act sterile is to separate the body and the soul. That it is your body that expresses your love. And he said in his email to me, again, this was probably 20 years ago, he said, how dare you insinuate that my spiritual love for my wife has anything to do with where I put my sperm?
God bless his wife.
What he was saying was, it doesn't matter if I ejaculate in a condom or not. I'm still loving my wife spiritually. But his word choice was very interesting. How dare you insinuate that where I put my sperm has any bearing on my love for my wife? And I thought, well, gosh, I don't think I wrote this in my response, but I thought, well, gosh, if you put your sperm in your next door neighbor, that would have some bearing on your love for your wife. So, and the point here is exactly back to what you were saying. Our faith is incarnational. Love is a bodily reality. It is expressed in and through our bodies. And if we are to love responsibly, we must look at the whole reality, the integral reality of what it means that we are male and female. And integral to being male and female is this question of fertility. Wojtyła, John Paul II, is writing Love and Responsibility in the context of a world in the 1950s that is rapidly shifting in saying contraception is a good thing. Render the ability we have now with modern technology to render the sexual act sterile in an effective way. And the pill was just on the horizon. I think it was 1960 that the pill debuted, at least in America. So he was writing even before the debut of the pill. But he could see what was coming. He could recognize that there is a sexual revolution underway that is founded on a very premise of trying to separate love from the responsibility of raising children. And he's saying, we got to keep these two together. And that's really where the title, Love and Responsibility, comes from.
But it's really, that is the sexual revolution was going on, and he was writing in Poland, which was under communist occupation. So we've got the other end, but they meet. The sexual revolution and communism meet at a certain point.
That's right.
And it's their hatred of the human person.
That's right.
Really.
That's right.
And so as the West was coming up with contraception and how it can liberate us sexually, communism was eating it up. They'd send it to us. We'll take it. They gave it to all their women. And even today, the abortion rate in communist countries and former Soviet bloc countries, it's plural. I mean, it's not one or two. We're talking 5, 6. When I was there, it was over 10 per woman.
You're saying when you were in Russia,
yeah,
you would meet women who have had as many as 10 abortions.
It was the average number.
The average
number.
Good Lord.
It was so astronomically high, it was hard to believe. But that's what I was told and what I've researched. So yeah, we had the whole world, and there are lots of reasons for this, all the revolutions that have happened, the Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, all these things that happened that made us think we can be masters of ourselves.
Right.
Is that original thing, the original sin. We can do it. Did God really say, no, we'll do it ourselves. So that's what you see in just the quickness of just eating up that jagged little pill.
And here's a great point where JP2 talks about the difference between mastery understood as domination of my bodily functions to the point where I think I can manipulate my body in any way I want. That's one sense of mastery. A true sense of mastery has to do with being master of my desires so that I can orient my desires towards love, towards responsible love and responsibility.
And that really, as we were doing our course, so often it came up, this is an examination of conscience.
Yes.
This whole course was an examination of conscience because it was over and over again, this is love, are you loving? This is love, do you need to grow in love? This is love. And really, what is love? Who is love? It's Christ and our response to Christ. That's what this course was about. This is Christ. What is your response to him? So it's a real call to maturity and to putting away that false ego, which our whole world thinks is the only thing that matters. It's as if you were born and someone said, now go create your own self, like go be your own person, and whatever you want is what shall be. And as if nothing existed before you and nothing will come after you, that you don't have a destiny. And so we are trying to create our own reality, reinventing the wheel over and over again and making the same mistakes over and over and over again. That's what John Paul II is doing in Love and Responsibility. He's saying, let's look at our personal experiences. Where do we know, without even being told, that we're not being loved?
Right.
And
that's key. You use two words there that are key to understanding the whole text: personal and experience.
Yeah.
We have to look at what is a person, and we have to look at how our experiences themselves confirm what we're really looking for. If we're looking at the depths of our experiences will confirm what the church is teaching. We could put it this way. The truth of the church's teaching on sex is confirmed in the wounds of those who reject that teaching.
Yeah.
And this is a silly way to put it, but sometimes I'll say, if you comb your hair with a chainsaw, there will be some indications that you shouldn't have done that, right? Mm-hmm. In other words, the scarring on your scalp from combing your hair with a chainsaw would say, oh, I shouldn't be using a chainsaw to comb my hair. Well, we have to look at the scars, the wounds in our own personal experience of embracing what the culture says about sex and say, where do those hurts, where do those pains, where do those wounds come from?